I'm going to give you 4 main reasons why you should not launch with a photorealistic rendering. If you got lots of money and you got lots of time, go for it. That's great. But at the end of this video, I'm going to explain one way that you can kind of bring down your costs of prototyping, and you got to be a little bit careful about it, but this is a fairly common strategy that people use to keep their costs down on prototyping. That's sort of halfway between a full pre-production prototype and a 3D rendering, okay? Can you launch with just a 3D rendering? With Kickstarter? No, you can't. With Indiegogo? Yes, you can, but you shouldn't, and I'm going to tell you why. So it may be tempting. I totally get it. Startups, entrepreneurs, you want to keep your capital at risk at an absolute minimum, especially before you validate that X amount of people are willing to pay X amount for this product. And photorealistic renderings are kind of it's a tempting offer. They're way cheaper than creating a prototype. They take way less time. They're really easy to put together and throw up. And you'll probably see campaigns on Indiegogo, past, current, and future, that have photorealistic renderings, 3D renderings on their campaign page. Most of those are actually, they do have the physical prototypes, and they're just using that as, hey, I'm explaining more about the product, maybe an exploded diagram or something like that to show how it functions or how it's built, to give more context to the product. But campaigns that just launch with a photorealistic rendering usually aren't that successful. I'll get into those reasons in a little bit, but I understand that it's way less expensive. It's very tempting to do that. The best sort of rationality, or the best reasoning I've heard behind that is to, hey, I want to validate the market. I just want to throw this up. I don't want to spend all this money prototyping. And I just want to see what people's interests are on this. And I get that. And there's strategies similar to that don't involve Indiegogo or Kickstarter, which I can talk about in a little bit. But I don't think that that's a valid way to validate your market, because the product that you're presenting, this rendering, isn't the real product, and people know that. Right? It's not 2013 anymore. People know what photorealistic renderings are, and it gets their spidey senses tingling. It shows them that, hey, you don't really believe in this idea enough to put your own money where your mouth is and actually build it out and prove that, hey, what I'm claiming I'm actually going to make, maybe it's not the final version of the product, but like, hey, I'm close, I'm kind of on the way there. Because these days anyone can go on Fiverr and spend a couple $100 and get their idea thrown up in a mock-up that looks really pretty and has all nice shadows and stuff. But people aren't really going to part with their money. If your idea was to, hey, I'll see how much people want to back this, and then if they really want to back it, I'll build it, you're going to be disappointed with the result, because you're going to have way less people that are willing to actually show you that they're interested compared to if you actually built the prototype out. One thing I will mention, when I'm saying building a prototype, I'm also not saying like, okay, just throw something together with parts that you bought at Home Depot. Most of the time it needs to be a professional, at least professional looking prototype. So you as a startup, you as the entrepreneur, you need to either have the expertise or have hired the right expertise to build something that shows your audience that, hey, this is what the product is. I'm invested in it. I'm going to make this happen. You're not going to be disappointed. It's not going to be like, lots of other crowdfunding horror stories where people say they're going to build something and then they don't, for a number of reasons at the end of the day. All right, I'm going to give you 4 main reasons why you should not launch with a photorealistic rendering. At the end of this video, I'm going to explain one way that you can kind of bring down your costs of prototyping, and you got to be a little bit careful about it, but this is a fairly common strategy that people use to keep their costs down on prototyping. That's sort of halfway between a full pre-production prototype and a 3D rendering, okay? So trust is number 1. Trust is the biggest uphill battle in the crowdfunding arena right now. Both platforms, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, are trying to do things to keep founders more accountable, build a level of trust on the platform, because there's been too many campaigns that have raised a boatload of capital and then not fulfilled on their promises. Some of that is negligence and ignorance, and a chunk of that is just people lying and being greedy. So if you're launching with a photorealistic rendering, you're kind of starting on the back foot. If you look at the most successful campaigns out there, you'll see a lot of trust building stuff on their campaign. So they'll have behind the scenes photos, they'll have backstory, their education, the reason why they want this project to, go live and be out in the masses. They'll have pictures and videos of them designing the product, of prototyping the product, of maybe flying to China and overseeing the supply chain side of things. You want to give as much information to help your backers trust that you're actually going to fulfill your promises to them, and you're just not really going to be able to do that with a photorealistic rendering. Number 2, cost. If you're launching with just a rendering, you're really not going to know what your costs are. Even like as you build out your prototype, you're not going to have exact costs by the end of it. There's a few more steps to take place. You need to talk to a lot of people in the supply chain, and you need to figure out all of your tooling costs and assembly costs and everything like that. But you're a few steps closer with a prototype than you are with just a rendering. So one of two things will happen. One, and worst, you'll price too low and you'll be underwater, meaning the cost of tooling and your per unit cost and development cost will not equate to how much you are selling each unit for. So if you do that, you're sort of running in the red. Why bother running a campaign in the first place? Good reasons why you don't want to make massive margins on the first production run, and even breaking even is perfectly fine if you're wanting to do a V2, V3, or build a bigger brand and start pulling out profits. Or, I mean, just you shouldn't really want to make a ton of money just based on the first crowdfunding campaign. That's not usually how they operate. But you certainly need to make enough profit to reinvest in the business to build a better V2, V3, or other SKUs. So, okay, you can either price it too low or you can price it way too high, and you're going to alienate too many people. So your conversion rate is going to shoot way down if it's priced too high. People aren't going to want to pay for it, right? So you will sell less product and you will not have nearly as a successful campaign as you would if you knew what your true costs were. So launching with the 3D rendering, you have no idea what your costs are going to be. When you have a prototype and you do a few more steps, you're going to have you're just going to have more information, more data, and you're going to be able to make a better decision on how to price your product. Number 3, guaranteeing what the final product is. I've been a part of a lot of campaigns where the original concept, the concept art, the concept drawings, the original design files, the final product really doesn't look anything like them, or there's some pretty significant changes. And that's okay. That's what prototyping is all about. It's figuring out, hey, does this fit together? Does this feel right? Is there a better material we can use? If you don't prototype it, you're not going to know that. So you're almost guaranteeing that what you launch with isn't what someone's going to get, and that's going to kill your credibility. So you're going to lose a lot of trust. People just aren't going to be happy with it. You're not going to know how to cost everything out. It's just not a good way to go. So you need to, once you launch, you need to know this is what the backers will get. All right, so that's guaranteeing what the final product is. Last one, timelines. So yeah, it's super common. I wish it wasn't, but for crowdfunding campaigns to be behind schedule. Oh, we've got shipping delays. Oh, we've got problems with the supply chain. There are valid reasons for things to be behind, but when you launch your campaign, you need to make the best educated guess as to what your timelines actually are. So there's no guarantees in terms of timelines, but if you're just, once again, if it's just a rendering, you will have not spoken to everyone that you need to speak to in order to know what your timelines will be. So you've got another 2 choices. So 1, you lie and you make up something that sounds nice, but you have no idea whether it's feasible or not. Or 2, you set yourself a really nice, long, lofty, 2-3 year long timeline for when the backer's actually going to get the product, and neither of those are going to be good. So 1, just don't lie to people and tell them things that aren't actually going to happen, or you don't have a really high level of confidence that will happen. And 2, if the campaign timelines are way too long, your conversion rate is going to be garbage. Why bother launching in the first place? So there is a bit of a middle ground between launching with a photorealistic rendering and launching with a fully built out production ready prototype. You have to be very careful with this. Basically, in order to launch, you need to have a prototype that at least appears to function, and you can guarantee that you can actually have it built the way that you're promising it to function. As an example, maybe building the final PCB boards that are all totally custom. That's what you want to have in the final product. But that's expensive and time consuming. Using an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi that shows that it functions the way it is, and you can demonstrate that, and you've had the discussions, you can guarantee that you can actually build the final PCB the way you want to. That, according to Indiegogo and Kickstarter, is totally fine. And I've seen lots of campaigns that have launched that appear to be, perfect prototypes, but there's, a little bit of stuff behind the scenes of it's not exactly the final prototype, but everything on the surface works. And most importantly, they know that they can actually build it. They have the resources, they have the people to actually deliver on the final thing that they're promising. So, a little bit more extreme of an example, you don't need to build the molds and tooling to actually build the the production ready version of this. You don't want to invest in toolings, molds, final PCB, a whole bunch of stuff until you actually are successful with the campaign. Like, let's not kid ourselves. You don't want to put 60 grand at risk or 100 grand at risk, whatever it is, and then the campaign doesn't go well. You want to mitigate as much of that as you possibly can. A 3D rendering is not enough. That is definitely not enough, and building absolutely everything that you need to in order to launch is a little bit overkill. If you got lots of money and you got lots of time, go for it. That's great. But sort of the smart way to do it is to, be selective with everything that you build out. So I do need to state again, if you are presenting something that appears to function, but there might be a few things that you need to change on the internal side of things, that's okay, as long as you can guarantee that you have the resources, you have the people, you have the tools to do it. The people are actually gonna get the product. So you need to make sure that the math adds up. You can't make promises that you can't guarantee that you can keep. But I don't know, be creative with it. If you have any questions about this, reach out to us. This is what I love to talk about, so feel free. Cheers.